On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel conducted a coordinated strike on Iran that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This was the most significant escalation in US-Iran relations in 47 years. The man who ruled Iran since 1989, who held ultimate authority over every branch of government, military, and the judiciary, killed in an airstrike on his Tehran compound. So naturally, everyone asked, is this finally it? Is this the war that's been threatened for nearly half a century? Let me take you back 2 weeks before that strike. On February 19, 2026, President Trump gave Iran an ultimatum: 10 to 15 days to make a deal, or as he put it, bad things will happen. And on February 28th, those bad things happened. But here's what's fascinating about this moment. It follows a pattern that's been playing out between these two countries since 1979. The 1979 hostage crisis, the accidental shootdown of a passenger plane in 1988, nuclear standoffs in the 2000s, the assassination of Iran's top general in 2020, and just last June, a 12-day war that brought U.S. bombers within striking distance of Iran's nuclear facilities. And yet, here's what's fascinating. Full-scale war has never actually happened, not once in 47 years. Think about that for a second. These two countries have been mortal enemies for nearly half a century. They've had countless reasons to go to war. They certainly have the weapons to do it. So why haven't they? That's what we're going to unpack today, because the answer reveals something important about how modern conflict actually works. The assassination of Iran's supreme leader on February 28, 2026 was unprecedented. Iran declared 40 days of mourning. Iranian state media confirmed the death. President Trump announced that a large amount of leadership had been eliminated in the strikes, which targeted 24 provinces and killed at least 201 people, according to Iranian media. This was, by any measure, the biggest escalation in nearly half a century of US-Iran conflict. But here's what most people missed in the aftermath. We've actually been here before. Not exactly here. This was the most severe strike yet. But we've been on the brink of total war more times than most people realize. In 1979, Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. That's over a year. America didn't invade. In 1988, the U.S. Navy accidentally shot down Iran Air Flight 655, killing all 290 people on board, mostly civilians. Iran didn't retaliate with war. Fast forward to January 2020, the U.S. assassinates Qasem Soleimani, arguably Iran's most important military leader after the supreme leader himself. Iran fires missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq, but then stops short of triggering all-out war. And then, last June, we got the closest call yet. Israel launched what historians are calling the most devastating attack on Iran in modern history, and the United States joined in, bombing 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Iran responded by firing over 500 ballistic missiles at Israel and hitting a U.S. base in Qatar. And then, both sides agreed to a ceasefire. 12 days, and it was over. This pattern doesn't make sense unless you understand what's really happening beneath the surface. So let's break down the 5 forces that keep pulling these two countries back from the brink every single time. Let me start with the obvious. America is the most powerful military on Earth. Iran is not even close. But here's the thing about warfare in 2026. You don't need to be stronger to make war unbearably expensive for your enemy. You just need to be able to hurt them badly enough that they think twice. Iran can't defeat the U.S. military in a conventional war. No country can. But Iran doesn't need to win. It just needs to make America bleed. Let's look at what Iran actually has at its disposal. over 600,000 active military personnel, and another 350,000 reserves. Now compare that to the roughly 1,000 to 2,500 U.S. troops currently stationed in Syria and Iraq. See the asymmetry? But the real leverage Iran has is geographic. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and this matters more than you might think. 21% of the world's oil passes through that narrow waterway every single day. If Iran mines it, blocks it, or even just makes it too dangerous for tankers to navigate, global oil prices could double within a week. Iran also has ballistic missiles that can reach every U.S. military base in the region: Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, and it's proven it's willing to use them. Remember those strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq after Soleimani's assassination? That was Iran sending a message: we can hit you whenever we want. Then there's Iran's real ace in the hole, what they call the axis of resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon with tens of thousands of fighters and an arsenal that would make some national armies jealous. The Houthis in Yemen, who've been striking commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Shia militia scattered across Iraq, and until recently, Hamas in Gaza. According to U.S. intelligence officials, Iran funneled about $1 billion to Hezbollah alone in 2025. That's not an army. That's a distributed network of proxy forces that can activate across 6 different countries the moment war begins. Here's what makes this so effective. America can bomb Tehran, sure. It can take out Iran's conventional military in a matter of weeks. But you can't bomb an ideology. You can't bomb a proxy network that has no single capital to destroy. And Iran knows that as long as it can threaten U.S. interests across the Middle East, America will think very carefully before committing to total war. This is deterrence, not through strength, but through cost.
Let me show you just how fast things can spiral economically. During that 12-day war last June, oil prices spiked 15% in 3 days. 15% from a war that lasted less than 2 weeks. Now imagine what happens during a full-scale conflict that drags on for months or years. We keep coming back to that Strait of Hormuz statistic because it's really the economic choke point of the entire global system. 21% of the world's oil flows through that 39-kilometer-wide strait every single day. Close it, even temporarily, and we're looking at oil prices potentially hitting $200 a barrel. Your $3.50 gallon of gas becomes $7. And it's not just oil. 30% of the world's containerized trade passes near Iranian waters. Iran has already demonstrated its willingness to seize tankers. They did it to British vessels in 2019. They've attacked commercial ships in the Persian Gulf. During an actual war, every oil tanker, every cargo ship within missile range becomes a target. The global supply chain, already fragile after COVID, the Ukraine war, and various other shocks, would collapse. Insurance costs for shipping through the region would become prohibitive. Some companies would just stop shipping entirely. But here's the political reality that often gets overlooked. America's closest allies in the region desperately do not want this war. In January 2026, Gulf state officials, we're talking Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, the UAE, warned Washington not to escalate because they know Iran could retaliate by striking their territory. These countries have built their entire economies on oil infrastructure and financial services. One Iranian missile strike on Saudi oil facilities could wipe out billions in value overnight. Remember what happened in 2019 when Iran, or Iranian-backed forces, hit Saudi oil facilities? It knocked out 5% of global oil supply with a single attack. These Gulf states are caught in the middle, and they're using every ounce of diplomatic pressure they have to keep the US and Iran from going to war. Because when your entire economy is based on extracting and selling oil, the last thing you want is a war that turns your oil fields into target practice. Both America and Iran understand this economic reality, and both sides use it as leverage to avoid crossing that final line into total war.
Let's talk about the political realities on both sides, because this is where things get really interesting.
Donald Trump ran on ending wars, not starting them. His entire political brand is America First, which to his base means no more endless Middle East conflicts that cost trillions of dollars and thousands of American lives. When Trump bombed Syria in 2017, his own supporters were furious. Even after assassinating Soleimani in 2020, he de-escalated within days. But Trump also has another political priority: unwavering support for Israel. And Israel desperately wants Iran's nuclear program destroyed, or at least severely crippled. So Trump is caught between two political imperatives: his base, which wants him to stay out of Middle East wars, and his allies, Israel, hawkish Republicans, evangelical Christians, who want maximum pressure on Iran. The result? Trump threatens, he postures, he moves aircraft carriers into position, but he consistently stops short of total war. Starting a full-scale war with Iran in an election year when inflation is already a political nightmare and voters are exhausted from foreign conflicts would be political suicide. Trump knows this. Now, flip to Iran's side, and the political situation is equally precarious, maybe even more so. The Iranian regime is weaker now than it's been in decades. In December 2025, the largest protests since 2022 erupted across all 31 of Iran's provinces. We're talking thousands killed in the government crackdown and 21,000 people arrested. The regime is barely holding on to power. Iranian leaders are playing a dangerous game. If they go to war with the United States and lose badly, which they almost certainly would in conventional terms, the regime collapses. If they go to war and it drags into a prolonged conflict, the economy collapses and the regime collapses. But here's the flip side. If they appear too weak in the face of American and Israeli threats, they lose legitimacy and the regime might collapse anyway. So Iran does what it's been doing for 47 years. It threatens, it activates proxy forces, it fires missiles at US bases in Israeli territory, but always with just enough restraint to avoid triggering the full-scale American military response that would end them. Neither leader can afford this war right now, and that's one of the biggest reasons it keeps not happening.
Here's the ugly truth about modern US-Iran relations. Both sides have figured out that proxy warfare is way more effective than direct confrontation. Think about it from Iran's perspective. Why would Iran fire missiles directly at Washington or American cities when it has Hezbollah firing rockets at Israel? Why would it attack the US military head-on when it has Houthi rebels in Yemen disrupting global shipping? Why risk everything in a direct confrontation when it has Iraqi militias that can strike US bases with deniability? Iran gets all the benefits of fighting America without officially being at war with America. That's brilliant strategy if you're the weaker power. And the United States does the exact same thing, just with better technology. America doesn't invade Iran. Instead, it sanctions Iran's economy into the ground. It uses cyber attacks to sabotage nuclear facilities. It assassinates Iranian military leaders with drone strikes from thousands of miles away. And when Israel wants to bomb Iranian nuclear sites, America provides intelligence, weapons, and air defense support while maintaining just enough distance to say, that was Israel, not us. Both sides have built an entire system where they can inflict pain on each other constantly without ever crossing the threshold into declared total war. This is what political scientists call the forever conflict. It never ends, but it also never escalates to the point where one side has to actually win or lose decisively. And here's why this system is so stable. If Hezbollah gets decimated in Lebanon, Iran doesn't lose. The Iranian regime survives. If a US base in Iraq takes casualties from a militia attack, America doesn't declare war on Iran. It retaliates against the militia, maybe, but not against Tehran directly. Both sides can bleed each other indefinitely without triggering the catastrophic costs of full-scale war. And as long as proxies exist, and they will continue to exist because both sides keep funding them, both countries will keep using them instead of fighting directly. It's ugly, it's endless, but from a strategic standpoint, it works for both sides.
let's talk about why history matters here, because both countries carry deep scars from past wars. Iran remembers the Iran-Iraq War. If you're not familiar with it, this was one of the bloodiest conflicts of the 20th century. From 1980 to 1988, Iran and Iraq fought a war that killed over 1 million people. Chemical weapons were deployed, cities were leveled, the economy was destroyed. And after 8 years of absolute horror, nothing changed. No territory was gained, no decisive victory was achieved, just death, destruction, and economic collapse. Iran's leaders, especially the older generation still in power, remember that war vividly. They know that a war with the United States, which has military capabilities far beyond what Iraq had in the 1980s, would be exponentially worse. America has its own historical baggage. Iraq and Afghanistan haunt American military and political thinking to this day.
In 2003, the US invaded Iraq with promises of a quick victory and rapid reconstruction. 20 years and trillions of dollars later, America left behind a country that's still struggling with instability. Afghanistan was the same story. 20 years, an unbelievable amount of money spent, thousands of American lives lost, and the Taliban took over the moment US forces withdrew. American generals and policymakers remember those wars intimately, and they know that invading Iran, a country 3 times the size of Iraq with 3 times the population and a significantly more capable military, would make Iraq and Afghanistan look easy by comparison. Iran's geography is a natural fortress. Mountains, deserts, urban centers built for guerrilla warfare. The US could certainly destroy Iran's conventional military in a matter of weeks, but occupying Iran, controlling Iran, rebuilding Iran? It's not just difficult, it's probably impossible without committing hundreds of thousands of troops for decades. So when Trump threatens Iran, Iranian leaders hear the same threats they've been hearing for 47 years. And when Iran threatens America, US military planners calculate the cost and conclude, not worth it. This is the ultimate lesson of history. Wars are incredibly easy to start. They're almost impossible to end on your own terms. Both America and Iran have learned that lesson the hardest way possible.
So let's bring this all together. 5 forces keep dragging the US and Iran back from total war. First, mutual deterrence. Iran can't win, but it can make America bleed badly enough that Washington thinks twice. Second, oil and economics. The world literally cannot afford a war that shuts down 21% of global oil supply. Neither can America's Gulf allies. Third, domestic politics. Trump can't afford to start another Middle East war with his voter base, and Iran's regime can't afford a war that might topple them. Fourth, the proxy system. Both sides have figured out they can fight each other constantly through intermediaries without ever triggering total war. And fifth, historical memory. Both countries remember what long, grinding wars actually cost, and neither wants to repeat that experience. These aren't just abstract concepts. These are the real forces that operate every single time tensions spike. Every time it looks like war is finally inevitable, these 5 factors reassert themselves and pull both sides back. This isn't peace. It's definitely not stability. It's a permanent state of almost war, almost diplomacy, almost collapse. And as long as these 5 forces exist, US-Iran relations will probably stay locked in this strange frozen conflict where both sides constantly threaten total war but never quite pull the trigger.
So let's analyze the February 28th assassination through those 5 forces we just discussed. Ayatollah Khamenei ruled Iran for 37 years. He was the ultimate decision-maker on war and peace. His death was unprecedented, the biggest escalation in 47 years. But here's what's remarkable. All 5 forces were still operating. Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz and its proxy network. The global economy still can't afford oil disruption. Trump still faces election year constraints. The proxy system still exists independently, and military planners on both sides still remembered that occupying Iran is nearly impossible. The assassination put maximum stress on these forces, but didn't eliminate them. Iran faced a choice: massive retaliation that risks regime collapse, calculated response like after Soleimani, or strategic restraint. History suggested they'd choose the middle path: retaliate enough to save face, but stop short of triggering total war. The real question wasn't whether Iran would respond. The question was whether the five forces that prevented war for 47 years would finally break under this unprecedented provocation. And that answer tells us whether this pattern is truly structural or whether there are red lines that, once crossed, shatter everything.
What happened on February 28, 2026 was fundamentally different from everything that came before. Killing a supreme leader, the ideological foundation of the entire Islamic Republic, is not the same as killing a general or bombing nuclear sites. So yes, February 28th could have been the moment that broke the 47-year pattern. But here's what the historical record shows. Those five forces aren't dependent on one person. They're structural realities. Iran can still close the strait, whether Khamenei is alive or dead. The global economy still needs oil stability. Presidents still face political constraints. The proxy network still operates, and occupying countries is still nearly impossible. What happened after February 28th tells us something crucial. Did Iran choose massive retaliation and trigger full-scale war? Did it respond calculatedly and preserve the pattern? Or did it show restraint despite the provocation? The answer reveals whether those five forces are truly structural, meaning they'll keep preventing total war regardless of provocations, or whether there are red lines that, once crossed, shatter the pattern entirely. February 28, 2026 was the longest almost war in modern history, facing its ultimate test. Understanding why these two countries keep almost going to war but never quite crossing that final line, that's the key to understanding Middle East geopolitics in the 21st century. If you found this analysis helpful, subscribe, because the US-Iran relationship will keep producing moments like this, and understanding the pattern is the only way to make sense of them. Thanks for watching.